Good afternoon to all. Welcome to the Talks tent at S.E.A Focus 2020, and thank you for joining us at the second talk of our S.E.A Spotlight series, Southeast Asia Art Watch, Indonesia. Before I hand the time over to the panel, please allow me to quickly introduce you to our speakers for today. First on our left, we have Lear, a curator collective with a focus on research-based projects presented in an experimental and artistic approach. And next to them, we have artist Mella, known for her complex costume installations and the focus on how culture and race are embedded in clothing, body, and food. And in 1988, she co-founded Cemeti Institute for Art and Society with Nindityo Adi Purnomo. And on her right is Dr. Djien, retired medical doctor and entrepreneur who has been actively collecting modern and contemporary Indonesian art for the last 40 years. He is the founder and curator of OHD Museum in Magelang, Central Java. And finally, on the right, we have our panel moderator, Tandio, a businessman and collector who is also the founder of the Indo Art Now Foundation, an online archival platform. And he currently serves as Fair Director of Art Jakarta. And please join me in welcoming our panelists for today.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming and joining us. Before we start, from my side, I would like to do a little bit brief of a background of the last happening or development of the Indonesian art scene. And from there, I will start to have some questions to our panelists and then towards to the audience. So if I may I start with the academic side. There are two main biennales in Indonesia. The first one is the Jakarta Biennale, and the number two is the Jogja Biennale. Both are very established within our country and the region. And the new thing that is the last 5 years is that there's a lot of new biennales that most of the audience do not know. So we have the Makassar Biennale that's going on, the Jatim East Java Biennale, and both of them are really trying to also showing new works or show the new scenes of Indonesia. In the Biennale side, internationally, Rang Rupa, one of the speakers before this talk, Rang Rupa is being appointed as the Artistic Director of Documenta 2022. Okay, the rain is good. This appointment of the Rang Rupa as the Artistic Director really helps to put Indonesian in the global contemporary art scene. On the museum side, the past 5 years, we have a new museum, which is Macan Museum, which was established in 2017. And also, there's also a new private museum named Tumurun. Of course, there's a lot of private museums in Indonesia and coming up on the pipeline. And one of them is OHD Museum. And on the market side, there's actually one artist fair, which we all know, it's called Art Jogt. And in the past 2 years, there's also another new fair called Art Bali. Art Bali is also another artist fair that's been established in Bali. As for art fairs, of course, we have Art Jakarta, which is last year is our 11th edition. And there's also a new fair, Art Moments, which is going to be in this coming April for their second edition. Galleries-wise, we have a lot of exhibitions going on with all the galleries. There are also a number of new galleries, including like Ruchi Gallery, and also most of these galleries also participated in art fairs such as S.E.A Focus or Art Jakarta. Auction houses that has been around. There's international auction house has always been auctioning Indonesian artworks. But of course, lately, Indonesian artworks are not very highly priced in auction house. And in the local auction house has also been going on, but it has also quieted down by a lot. Last, a very brief explanation about the government bodies. 5 years ago, Indonesia first introduced something called the Bearcraft. Bearcraft is a government body that gives grants to artists and art institutions to help the art scene. And unfortunately, due to the restructuring of this latest government body, the future of similar support is unclear now because it's part of the Ministry of Tourism. So this is a very brief of what happened in the last 5 years of Indonesia. Now, Maybe we could start off with Dr. Uy. In your perspective or as a position of an art collector, what do you think of the past 5 years? What do you think? Do you think is good? What's the development?
I think that in these last 5 years, the development is amazing. But only a part of this development is exposed to the outer world. Indonesia is such a big country with nearly 18,000 islands, 270 million inhabitants. But what is known internationally or even nationally in terms of the art is only Yogyakarta, Bandung, Jakarta, and the island of Bali. And in my last year observations, I went to several parts of Indonesia. What is happening is amazing. So, not only on the island of Java. On the island of Java, you have big cities like Surabaya, Semarang, and Pasuruan, like that, which actually already has a lot of activities, but it's not enough exposed. But outside Java, Sumatra, and even Sulawesi, in my last trip to Gorontalo last December, it was such an inspiring trip that it's for the second year, they have an art festival which is in conjunction with the rice harvest, welcoming the rice harvest. And rice harvest is so important for us. The culture of harvesting, of producing rice, selling rice, and then distributing, cooking, eating, that is something important. If rice is not enough, the government will be in panic. And if the art, this year, is for the first time, they did the visual art. And it is all happening in the middle of the sawah, and the exhibition in a rice and rice mill warehouse. I think this was just the initiative of the local artists and community. Of course, the government support is just moral support, not yet financial. But I think sooner or later, they will give also financial support. And all those artworks which is related to the site will not be having that impact if you perform that in Jakarta or in Bandung. And in other parts of Java, a small city in Krabak, for the first time, they did a art exhibition, which I had to open also, and enthusiasm of the whole village is amazing. I think this is now in line with the new re-elected President Jokowi mindset. He has now the approach of building the country not from the center, from the periphery, just to the center. So, because this is the only way, I think, to diminish, to reduce the gap. Economic gap, cultural gap, social gap, power gap, everything. Also, technological gap. But sooner or later, because now the government is also putting or giving more money to the local government, and the local government, if they support these art activities, think sooner or later, the Indonesian art map will change. And it's now time, in fact, to support this underprivileged. I think maybe for the money enough, later maybe I can go further. Yeah.
So, okay, Mella, what do you think of what Dr. A just said? He said that it's more and more localized, decentralized art scene that most of us don't really know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, of course, through the globalization and the idea of the internet, so there's very much more exchange between the different islands than before. So before, for example, for us like an artist community, we want to exchange with artists from the other islands. It was just very hard to get access to them. Although many from the other areas in Indonesia, they mostly come to study art in Yogyakarta or in Bandung in Jakarta. But then what often happens is they don't go back to their island or don't go back to their village. So they all stayed in the centers in Java. So there has been an effort, especially from the artist communities, to try to reach out and to do exchange projects with artists in the other islands. So for example, Ruang Rupa, they already for maybe 10 years already have this kind of programs doing exchange with artists in the different areas, as well as Forum Lenteng. And also in Cemeti, we did a lot of exchange projects in residencies with artists from the other islands. And also our focus for the coming 3 years in Cemeti is also to get more to more exchange. So not so much about bringing the artists to Java or bringing Javanese artists to the other islands, but also in between the islands. So for example, this year we worked together with the Jogja Biennale because we got some funding from the Netherlands to do this kind of exchange project. And we helped them to set up a biennale, a residency project with artists doing residencies in the sea, in the river and on the land. So, and then, for example, we had artists from Sulawesi. They did a residency in Aceh, for example. And then after that, they showed their works, what they've been doing in the Jogja Biennale. So I think this is something which is already going on for many years. Of course, it was always very hard because the lack of funding. But now I think there's more access and also more possibilities to develop this further because, yeah, I think we also already fed up with only Java as the so-called center of Indonesia.
What about Mira? Maybe you can explain as a curator. Do you realize that actually there's more projects going on outside of this center of the arts?
In our experience, we actually decided as a space. At first, as a space, our art space used to be in the center of the city in Yogyakarta. But then, since last year, we decided that it's better for us to be nomadic. And by being nomadic, by being nomadic, our question was how to be at the same time rooted to where you come from, for example. So what we did was that since 2017, we started this biennale, but we wouldn't call it a biennale. It's happening like every 2 years in this small village under the volcano of the Merapi. We call it 900 MGPL. It's a site-specific project in different sites around the village. And then for us, it's really exciting to have all that different venue set up in non-white cube space, for example, working with the community and then collaboratively, and not only having contemporary artists working there, but multidisciplinary non-artists also working on projects like anthropologists, historian, and other like that. But at the same time, the past 5 years, it's also very exciting for us to see how the government is actually supporting the mobility, for example. So for the past 5 years, for lyrics mobility, we are extremely helped by the government in a way that we wouldn't expect it like 10 years ago, for example. For example, when we, the latest one, when we stay in Senegal in Dakar for 2 months, we were hosted by the embassy of Republic Indonesia, and that was something that we wouldn't even think that the embassy of the Indonesia would open their house for us. That's like just one thing, but also the cultural mobility is very, very easy this time.
Do you think this is actually related to what Dr. Wee is saying, where actually is in line with the Jokowi government? That's why these ambassadors are opening a house.
We actually think so, because not only from Backcraft, but there's also other platform, like for example the Dinas Warisan Budaya, that's still under the government. But it only happened through Jokowi. And also when we stayed in the embassy, for example, the people in the embassy open up their door because of government, because of Jokowi's policy actually at that time, right?
Dito, what do you think?
I agree that it's in line with the government's policy. But at the same time, I also questioning in a way that the mobility is more to go abroad than to go around. Since we have a lot of island and since we have a lot of community around Indonesia, but the mobility is easier to go abroad, for example. And I think what makes this, let's say, trend, it's quite interesting because it's also give us a kind of new perspective, and it's no longer kind of something that is focused on the object, but it's also with the activity or the very cultural and very historical approach. So that's why it's very interesting to see how art can be part with that, especially the one that is not really given spotlight, so not really in the center. Yeah, I think it's
Interesting. Okay. Now, let's put marketing aside since our panelists are all academics. Yeah. May I ask, what do you think of the role of curators or academics that strengthening the art ecosystem in Indonesia? Maybe Mella, would you?
Yeah, I think the job of curator is really new in Indonesia. So I think we only talk about the last 20 years that we really work with so-called curators. And I think also the impact of curators have changed through time. So there was, for example, during the boom in like 2007, 2008, that curators almost became like a broker. Yeah, like a broker, because they were hired by the commercial galleries to bring in the important artists. And then it was also hard for the curators themselves, but at least finally they got paid well. So it was also, it was seen as a serious job in that time. And from there on, then they could develop further. On the other hand, it also had the impact that for many, the young artists especially, they finally just started to create works according to the demand of the curator. And of course, sometimes also because of the commercial system or infrastructure. So yeah, I think, for example, in Cemeti, we started with our residency program in that time because we thought it was very important to give space and time to the artists again to think what they really want to do and what is important for them to develop instead of just waiting for the team to set by the curators. So I think nowadays it's more balanced, and also you can see that many artists start to curate. And also sometimes curators start to make art or write, so I think it's kind of fluent in that sense, and I think that's very important as well. And in the meantime, we have many curators. For example, we organized a few years ago a forum for young curators, and then we already, from Yogyakarta, we had already something like 20 young curators, and most of them female. So I'm very happy with that, you know. So they think it's a serious job and they want to work on it, so that's very good.
Right. Do you think the roles of curators in Indonesia is diminishing or is getting bigger in power in terms of the whole ecosystem?
The thing is, it's just very hard to study as a curator, so we don't have a certificate as a curator. Although nowadays, like in the ITB in Bandung, they set up a curatorial program. But most of the curators are self-taught. So they start as artists, or they start as anthropologists, or they studied social science, for example. So yeah, I think it's very important to give space and to develop. So it's all sort of autodidact, and then everybody comes at it from a different angle and develops differently. But that's also very interesting, and it also really, how do you say that? It vibrates with the developments in Indonesia. So because of that, you have also all kinds of different streams happening at the same time.
Dr. Lee, as a museum founder or owner, what do you think? Do you think the curators part of the Indonesian art scene is growing, or is it getting more important? Or what is the role?
Yeah, I have experienced different periods. When I started collecting, there was no curator. We go to exhibitions of the artist is the curator. Yeah, and the artist is selling, no catalog like that. And then came the period of curators. And at the time, curators was just also a question mark, because people were asking, what is a curator? Because there is no study to become a curator at the art academy. everybody call themselves curator. Who is entitled to call himself curator? Do you have to be artist? Can you be an anthropologist? Can you be a collector? I think if you will see what is happening now, everybody can become a curator. It depends on only whether you are acknowledged or not as a curator. It is this public acknowledgement. It is not a diploma like what Mella said. Of course, a curator, according to me, is in fact, actually the police controlling what is happening in the world, what is exhibited, what is sold there in the auction house. Hey, is this okay? Is this can you be accountable for that, like that? But we have also experienced time that curator also has relation with the exhibition, with the selling, with everything, so that makes it all even more chaotic. And also, sometimes artists complain, if the curator is too strong, and dominant, the artist cannot work according his will, like that,
And remember, Dr. Wei, you yourself also curate some of the shows in OHD Museum.
Yeah, because all those works I collected was my curation.
Yeah, so
I select myself. I have no curator who selected for me. So I know best about my collection.
Right. Mira, as a young curator, what do you think of the curatorial presence in Indonesian art scene? Is getting bigger? Does it influence a lot to the Indonesian ecosystem?
I think so. I mean, nowadays everything has to be like with a curator. That's one. And then I was one of the self-taught curator who then, being advantaged by Cemeti Young Curator Forum. But then nowadays, young curators from Indonesia, they also study abroad for their, for their curatorial diploma, not only in. Because in Indonesia, I don't know, it's most of them still like self-taught or like from ITB, for example. But more opportunities, yes. Still no fee for curators, most of it. Hard work, yes, working hard, still no fee. And then what else? More open platform, so it's nice. It's like a very open playground. We have this, what else? I don't know, it's very, very difficult to say because I'm also working as curator, so yeah. Tito, maybe.
Okay. Maybe for us it's kind of different to see how curators work in the very structural way. But at the same, because we don't really have that kind of structure, like a lot of curators were self-taught curator in Indonesia. But at the same time, coming from our side, which we used to have a space, an independent space, work of curating is kind of wider than what we thought just to make an exhibition. For example, if we see from Cemeti, it's kind of not only holding an exhibition, but also it's part of hosting, part of choosing this and that to give the context and also react to how the ecosystem that where they live. That kind of thing it's wider than what we thought. So it's no longer about just creating an exhibition.
So can we say that there are more and more curators, younger curators coming into the Indonesian art scene?
Yeah.
Yeah?
In that case, yeah.
Definitely, yeah? All right. Now, end of last year, December 2019, The Guardian put up an interesting report on Artist Collective, as the recent Turner Prize is split into 4 ways, requested by the artists, considering themselves as a group or a collective. The report also mentioned that Rang Rupa appointed as the artistic director of Documenta 22 as a proof of how the artist collectives are taking over the world. All right. So in Indonesia, there are many parts of Southeast Asia too. The idea and the practice of an artist collective is not new. In fact, in Indonesia, we might say that they rooted deeply since the beginning of the Indonesian modern art development, as artists work together as sanggar since 1930s. Yeah? Do you think collective do play a bigger role in the global contemporary art platforms, especially Indonesia? Maybe we can start off with Lir, maybe Mira and Dito.
You. No, Dito start.
Me? Well, yeah. It's now it's getting bigger. I mean, in the term of in Western case, it's very big, but somehow it's already there in Indonesia. And then I think it's also interesting that people or the art scene start to think in the Western part it start to think like how do we create, and then it's a kind of new approach that I don't know, maybe it gives them more opportunity at the same time, and also it gives them, even though it gives them a new opportunity, but at the same time it's a little bit confusing because it's released their independent which they already had before. But yeah, I think it's more.
But for me, for example, the one that's very interesting is that because probably in socio-political conditions or situation in the world, basically, with like the right-wing rising and stuff, to work together or like to stay together, like what the Turner Prize winner, the four winners, did was more than just a gesture. It's really a political action for me, because it's like saying, like actively saying no to the what do you say, the competition that people trying to build, because this day it's really more important for you to like work together and step up together as a group in the art to say something rather than just like a individual competition. So yes, I think like that move is a strong and bold move, and then well, that's really heartwarming and giving us hope in a way.
Do you think the collectives in the world will be more and more?
I mean, it's not necessarily being a collective, or like it's not necessarily have one name, for example, but then moving together as like as the art world, for example. So it's more like how do you say that? Like having the statement, having the togetherness, less competition, for example.
Yeah, but what do you think? Why Indonesia has so many collectives, and what is the impact?
Yeah, it's the yeah.
What's so different?
I think
about
it has to
Indonesia?
do with that actually the government has no policy towards the contemporary and the modern art. So it all starts from personal initiatives. So it all comes from the artists, the curators, the art managers, the writers. They start to create the initiatives. And that creates the togetherness, what Mira and Dito are talking about. So you don't want to start alone to do something. So of course, everything starts from a certain need and urgency. And then each generation and each group have their own specific urgency. So they all start from that kind of urgency to develop a community. And because there is no, say, set up infrastructure from the government, so that's also why you have to create your own thing if you want to have things moving, to move forward. So, for example, yeah, Dito is part of the MES 56. It's a photography and video community. And they really brought forward the importance of photography in contemporary art, for example. So each community have their own goals and objectives. So I think it's very important. And then also what you see, like, because there was a bad infrastructure. So I mean, we don't have modern arts museums from the government, for example, who really have a collection and show important exhibitions. So yeah, because of that, you have to also the artists then give back to the community. So they set up their own, for example, Eko Nugroho, now he is building his school. So because he is really concerned with the arts education. So everybody of us try to contribute again, so to give back to the art community.
Do you think that do you think because of Indonesia has so many artists collective, that's why there's so much growth compared to other Southeast Asian country? That so it's so much growth in the art scene, you know. Do you think it's because of the collective, or is it because just?
Yeah, because to see the importance of the art and to see the development, and then everybody set up their own system to bring things forward. Yeah. I think, and also it's more like an alternative education system as well, to work in a community. So you're sort of pampered, especially if you come just out of the art school, that you have your community around you to support you. It's very important.
Dr. Wee, what do you think?
What do you mean by collective? If you mean with collective is collaboration, I think that is a necessity at this time. Otherwise, you will not be able to survive. If you see the artworks now, that is so complicated. You need experts from many disciplines, and you as an individual, you cannot master all those disciplines. So, and I think collectivity or collaboration is a virtue. I think Jaarsma, you know Jaarsma, because if you want to survive now, you want to succeed, one of the requirements is that you are able to work together with others. So collectivity or collective, and the meaning of collaboration, working together, is a must if you want to go further.
Dr. Yu, would you do exhibitions in OHD Museum regarding collectives and things like that?
Of course, we don't have any objection, but we are very limited in the space, you know, and sometimes collective works are used, and the problem is technical problems. Yeah. But for us, we don't mind. It doesn't matter whether collective, individual, or everything. I mean, it is good according to us. Yeah, according to our opinion, good quality. Of course, we can accept.
Dr. Wee, do you think Ruang Rupa as a collective is being selected as artistic director of Documenta? What is the impact on the Indonesian?
The impact is so amazing. It's so great because Indonesia, Documenta is, I think, one of the biggest art events in the world after Venice Biennial. And if Ruang Rupa can be appointed as artistic director, that is a great achievement. I think maybe the highest achievement until now of the Indonesian artists or artist collective.
Can you predict what is the benefit of Indonesia that is going to come because of them as a curator?
Yeah,
of
Indonesia
Documenta?
is definitely in a different level. Yeah, because now, of course, Indonesia is better exposed, and they can do a lot also for Indonesia with their position now as an artistic director. Yeah, we are very much benefited. Of course, we will, of course, be the locomotive to drag the Indonesian wagons.
Right. Mella, can I have some opinion also on this Ruang Rupa as artistic director of Documenta? What do you think is the impact?
Yeah, I think it's very important. Also, that suddenly there's a focus on Southeast Asia and on Indonesia. And then also that they dare to invite an artist collective like Ruang Rupa. And then with the idea also that to the sort of the unseen scene to bring forward in this kind of Documenta, because like all the work what is done in communities, there are so many things which is you only can see a part as a public, you know. So this kind of idea that they not only bring artworks, but they really bring the processes and the communication and the workshops, they all try to bring this kind of forms in the art to Kassel. So I think it's a big challenge for them, and I'm very happy that the committee was brave enough to invite them. So I totally support it, and I think it will have a big impact. Yeah. And one thing also Ade told me that I think it's also that the documenta itself wants to re-question the function of the documenta itself. So is it about to highlight the big artist, or nowadays what is the art scene and what is important in the art to bring forward? So I think that they dare to create these questions. I think it's very important.
Yeah, it is very important, not only for Indonesia, but also Southeast Asia in general, because this is the first time coming from Asia. And it will, I really hope that it will bring like the new sense of how to create or an art event, for example, by restructure the whole system inside with putting all this compound idea and also collaboration, and also it's inclusive kind of approaches, and yeah, but in relation to the collective in Indonesia itself, yeah, since it's already there, I'm not sure that it will, like boosting up, and then a lot of collectives appears. Not necessarily that will happen, and everything will still happen naturally. It will. A lot of young artists will try to make a kind of study group and call themselves as a collective. That's the habit. Before and after the Ruang Rupa became the artistic director of Ruang Rupa, of Documenta.
We are super excited, and we also have two wish basically. So since the appointment of Ruang Rupa to Documenta, because our concern is also about the alternative education for young artists or the art scene, basically how to stay in the loop, for example, in Indonesia. So we wish this appointment can first make it possible for international or like well-known, really good artists to have show or like to have presentation, for example, in Indonesia. So hopefully that Ruang Rupa can bring some in that I think is already starting at the moment, that Ruang Rupa start bringing like Tanya Bergera, for example. It's really exciting, even though it's still in Jakarta. So if Ade is here, please bring them like someone to other part of Indonesia too, not just to Jakarta. That's like one, because it's very important for that, for the exposure for us, for the young artists, young art scene, to have all this exposure to the good international artists, but also at the same time having the government, for example, or like the collectors, for example, understanding how important is this position of Indonesia representative in Documenta, even though it's not representative. If it can be like a study group for Indonesia, for example, to go to Documenta and just see and then experience and then learn from there and then bring back, and then for example, doing presentation around Indonesia, it will be very important, I think, for the, like to stay relevant, to stay in the loop, what's happening, not just because people probably they only know about the Venice Biennale, not really about the Documenta until now. So it's like very exciting. I hope it's opportunity for learning for the art scene.
Dr. Wee, as a OHD museum, do you think, as a museum owner, do you think you would say, you would do something like what Mira say, which is to support the presence of Ruang Rupa, in the Documenta, and do something so to as a museum contribution, What do you think?
What do you mean by support? What kind of support?
Any support.
Only support according to our capability.
Right. But do you think there's also an importance of the importance of the contribution from museum, like including Macan, including...
Of course. Museums in Indonesia should play an important role also, yeah. I think until now, the museum is still minor, yeah. Who plays a bigger role, I say the collectors, Yeah, hopefully there are more collectors who will build museums and then not keep the paintings only or the artworks for themselves. And yeah, still a lot of work to do, I think. So the more museums, the better.
Dr. Do you think there's more and more museums coming up in Indonesia? That's good. What do you think?
I hope so, but sometimes they are hesitating, because people are always, worried about criticism, and that is the biggest mistake. Of course, you are open, you will be criticized by everybody from everywhere. If there is no critic, that means you are nothing. When there is critic, that means, hey, people are looking at you. You play already a role like that. So I will my message to the collectors, just have the courage to open your collection to the public. I think if you do that, I think the art scene in Indonesia will grow faster, and the prestige of Indonesian art also will go up, as many of the very good artworks are in the hands of the collectors. And now, if you have people abroad, they want to see, they don't know where to see. Yeah.
Mella, as an artist, do you see the impact of Macan Museum that's just started 2017 in the Jakarta, the Indonesian art scene? What do you think of this impact?
I think the Macan Museum is going to play, or already plays, an important role, because I think it's one of the professional museum in the sense that they work with curators, and in which the owner of the museum is not involved in the direct programming. So they leave it all to the curators and the artistic director to create the program. And I think this is important because this is also what we are missing from the government. So we don't have a contemporary art museum from the government. So for example, talking about collections, the most important collections from Indonesian artists are actually in the Singapore Art Museum or other government museums abroad. And of course then in the private museums in Indonesia, but they are not in the government museum from Indonesia. So I think that's a pity, because I think also private collectors collect differently than, for example, the government museums. They should be more independent, they should more analyze what are important artists and not as an investment only. So I think, this is what is still lacking in Indonesia.
Mira, maybe you can say something about the development of museum in Indonesia. What is the impact towards us?
To see Macan is, it's nice. It's like how we saw Jogja Biennale, how Jogja Biennale tried to bring people in instead of going out, for example. In Macan, it's very nice to see all these amazing artworks in Indonesia. You don't have to go very far if you, So it's nice,
You mean the foreign collections that the owner collected, right?
Like the exhibition, for example, like the exhibition at the moment, it's really good. And then they're doing
foreign artists.
And they're doing the retrospective of Melati soon. So it's very interesting, because otherwise, who else will do this role? Because who else will actually take this? It's very brave. It's very advanced, for Indonesia.
Okay. Now that we keep on talking, there's always, we lack of government support, we lack of government grant, and as a curator collective, Mira, what do you think? Dito, what do you think the government? You would suggest the government to provide, and what is the impact, do you think, towards us for the next 5 years?
Maybe for me, one of the most important is how to bring or how to show a good, a proper, not only a good or bad, but it's about a proper, because, for example, when we saw Macan, it's not only about the exhibition itself, but also how to produce the whole things. Like, it's also important to For example, the knowledge about building up an exhibition, it's very important for the not only the young curator but also the young artists to see how massive, how to work with that scale, and at the same time, for us, it's also important to support the mobility inside Indonesia, because that's also the one who can connect, like what Dr. Oi said earlier about how to bring up all the community around Indonesia, and it's no longer about people from other island learning about Java, but also on the other hand, like, so it's very important to the government to see that potential, because it's very, yeah.
Mella, what do you think of this having Backcraft? Do you feel that there's actually a big support from Backcraft that impact our last 5 years?
Yes, I think so. So finally, some people in the government started to realize the importance of the development of the arts. And of course, they bring it back to the economics because it brings in people and things like that. So they still look at it through that, but at least they start to give money to support projects. So that's very important, yeah. And actually this money should come from the Ministry of Education and Culture, but yeah, in the end it comes from Backcraft, which is also related to tourism actually, right? So yeah, we hope they set up a new body of organization that they will support further. I think they will do, because otherwise the artists will start to protest, I hope. So yeah, I think there's hope, because slowly they start to understand the importance of the contemporary art.
Dr. Lee, maybe as a collector or as a museum owner, what do you think? Do you think the Backcraft or the government has done something and impact Indonesian art scene?
Not for the private museum. The private museum rely on their own, I think, their own capacity. But of course, for the artists and for the art activities, exhibitions abroad, like that, during the last 5 years, Backcraft has done good work, but that is, according to me, just transitional. Yeah, I think now it should be more design, and I think they are doing that now. That Backcraft is not just sponsoring, but Backcraft have a wider vision than just sponsoring. Yeah, because like what Backcraft has done in the Venice Biennial, they were sponsoring, but they had no networking with the international press, with the international institutions. That is why the Biennial of Indonesia pavilion in Venice was very minimally exposed, yeah? Much less than the event in Australia. Yeah, I think because the Backcraft until now, they only know how to sponsor.
Can I add on that?
Yes.
I think that's also the problem, because there's not a sort of endowment fund with experts in the board who decide which program gets funding. So it really depends on the civil servants being in that position who decides to give money to who. So if this person understands a bit about the art, then maybe they know who to give the money to. But for example, now we have a change of government again. So basically we have to start from zero again to inform those persons what we are doing, what is the importance, and so on. And that's the problem in Indonesia. Every 5 years we have to start from zero.
That's true. All right, so Dr. Wei, maybe if you can share some of your future plans for OHD Museum, any coming shows or?
Yeah, OHD Museum is, will continue its part in contributing to the Indonesian art scene. According to our capability, we are planning to expand also the art spaces, and maybe to be more active also in exhibiting young artist works. We have to look for another space, because now we are very limited because you know we have also too big collection, not in comparison with the availability space is not balanced. Yeah, that's why we cannot do frequently exhibitions from abroad. Hopefully, can be improved in the future.
Mella, if you can share also some of your future plans as an artist and also maybe for Cemeti.
Yeah, in Cemeti we already exist 32 years, and the last few years I stepped out finally from the daily operations, and so the new young team they make the program, and so the coming years they continue this exchange projects with artists and art workers from the different islands, and besides that running residency projects and also individual shows. Or group shows, so yeah, they continue. And I'm happy that the last few years I really started to focus only on my own work. So I'm planning a solo show in the National Gallery in Jakarta in July next year. So you're all welcome to see that in Jakarta.
And maybe Dito and Mira, you can share something of your future plans for Lear Space.
Since we already decide not to having our space in the city, and then since 2017 we already started this 900 MDPL every 2 years. So that's our main focus right now. And at the same time, together with the local people in Kaliurang, we're building up a kind of transient museum, which not only collecting the whole remnants of the artists who participate, like Mella, but also something that we can see from the community itself. So it's not only about the art, but it's also about the whole ecosystem of Kaliurang, which later we will bring that prototype of the museum, the transient museum, to New York this month, and then that's our near future plan.
You want to add something? No. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Today, we have very interesting panelists, and I think we still have time. So I'm going to start with the Q&A. Please note that all questions should be addressed to the panelists. Yeah. All right. So, not the moderator. Yeah. So, can we?
Any questions from the floor? Anyone has anything to direct to any of our panelists about their projects in the near future, or about the Indonesian art scene in general? No?
Hi, thanks for the talk. I wanted to ask about the role of diaspora artists like Budi Wijaya, who's now based in Singapore, and Tintin Wulia, whose practice is mostly based in the US. How do Indonesian artists, collectives, and private museums and collectors deal with these diaspora artists? Where do they stand in the art scene? Yeah, thanks. No, it's open to the floor. Yeah.
Yeah, for us it's not so important where the artist is based. For example, we work with Tintin Wulia. She had a residency in our place. I think it's just more important what an artist brings forward and what an artist can share and what an artist can develop. So, yeah, I think the diaspora artists, I think, are always important. It's the same like my position. I'm born in the Netherlands and lived 35 years in Indonesia, but so sometimes people see me as mostly people see me as Indonesian artist, and then sometimes as a Dutch artist, or I don't know. So this kind of stems, I think, is nowadays also not so important anymore. So, yeah.
Of course, I think the diaspora has become more and more important, and also our government now is very much actually promoting the diaspora, not only in the art, not about the artists. Like my cousin who is sitting there, she is also the director of the diaspora in Holland, to activate what we have abroad that can help Indonesia, because they are ready to use. Yeah, and if you have to educate, it's time consuming, money consuming. You can take what is already ready to be used here, and I think their experience abroad is very important also to the artist here who has never been abroad. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Maybe another question? Oh.
Thank you. Maybe I address this question to Dr. Wee. I understand that currently the Indonesian art market is struggling a little, especially contemporary art. I wonder what are the reasons, and is this because of the economy, or because the big collectors have collected enough, so they are not so keen anymore to collect the so-called the big names? Maybe perhaps now is the opportunity for other collectors in the past could not afford those prices to come in and look at Indonesian art. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think there are many factors. That the economy, of course, the tax amnesty, because now Indonesia, after the tax amnesty, everything has to be clear. And in the past, in fact, this buying and selling art is underground, no declaration. Yeah, now you have to declare everything. That is also an inhibition. And very important factor was the boom. The boom was too extreme. That was suicide, accordingly, which is not yet recovered until today. I spoke just recently also with a collector who suffered from this boom, lost a lot of money, cannot sell even for maybe 20%, and they are traumatized. They don't want to buy anymore. Then this will be long to overcome this. I say that is a learning process for Indonesia, because Indonesia is still very young, and at the time, most of the collectors were collecting not because of their passion for the art, but the prime motive is investment, which you should never do. The increase in price, you should consider this as a reward, not as a prime motive. You will then be disappointed and even maybe hate artworks, because if you become bankrupt of that.
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Dr. Wee. Just a follow-up question. Is there estate duty on art in Indonesia? That means, in other words, once a collector passes on, the government will come in and ask you to pay heavy taxes on your collection.
In Indonesia, there is no heritage tax.
No heritage, okay.
No heritage tax. Okay. But if you buy, you have to be able
to explain where your money comes
from where you have the money. You should have already paid tax on the money which you spend to buy.
Okay.
And if you sell, you have to pay tax.
And how many percent is that?
In fact, it depends on your income.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So I understand that all the panelists are very enthusiastic about the role of Ruang Rupa being appointed to be the artistic director of Documenta 2022. Actually, I think we have to see the result first, right? So if Ruang Rupa will do a great job, everybody will look at Indonesian art. What if the show turns out to be very bad? I mean, I'm a very optimistic person. Tom knows me. We are very good friends. But yeah, I just want to know your opinion. Yeah. What it will be? Let's say, in worst case, it will be the worst documenta ever in the history. And then Yeah.
We close shop, yeah, we close shop.
So who is going to judge that it is the worst documenta ever, you know? So that's also, I think, this challenge of this documenta, that there are many things maybe not so directly obvious for the public, the importance of what they were doing. So you have to dive deeper in it, maybe. So maybe it's important for the city of Kassel, but maybe not so much for the public who comes from Indonesia, for example. I don't know. So I think all these objectives will be different. And in that sense, I think it's also very hard to judge, especially now already. So I think it depends from who is looking to what. It's the same with I think, with the Singapore Biennale. I mean, depends from where you stand and where you come from, how you judge those kind of selections that are made, works which are there, how much time do you spend there to really understand, and all these kind of things.
Being enthusiastic, it's also being critical at the same time. I think it's important to see in that perspective. It's not really just what do you call, clapping your hands, but also it's needs to be critical to see. And the most important things from this ruang rupa is also it's very, in a way, it's also very discursive. So it's really hard to judge it from something that we already know or we already experienced before. So it's kind of challenging. That's it.
And also the award to the worst documenta, it's quite difficult to beat the last one. That was, no, sorry.
Okay, any more questions? Fun questions? Any more questions? Yeah? Okay. All right, thank you so much everyone for coming. We had a great time, and I'll pass it back to Rachel.
Sure. So thank you so much to our speakers. Thank you, Lear, Mella, Dr. Uy, and Tom for your pertinent insights today. A very warm round of applause for our speakers.